Welcome to another stocked and loaded episode of the Sports Card Nation podcast, the show that brings you all the important hobby news, discussions, debates, opinions, info, and interviews with key hobby and sports dignitaries. Also, if you're good, you know we are going to give away something. Now, here's the guy that wanted the cards more than the gum. John Newman.
What is up? Episode 168, Sports Card Nation. Happy to be back. Got a friend of mine on the show today, Mr. Danny Black. I met Danny for the first time at last year's National. Got to talk to him. Was a fan of the show and was telling me that. And I met his lovely wife as well. And he's a broadcaster in his own right, does a radio show in Baltimore and has a podcast. And he stopped and he's relaunched it. He picked my brain for some information there and was glad to help him. I'm not an expert, but glad to help anyone with any of those kind of questions when I can. And Danny does a great job. He's straight shooter, as we like to say, and a passionate guy. And he's also a Ravens fan, but somehow we still get along, and that's all right. We have fun with that. And if a Ravens and Steelers fan can get along, anything is possible. All right, let's start the show.
This is Zach Byrne, one of many hobbyists who returned during COVID. Thanks to John for steering me in the right direction. And remember, the hobby is the people.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com. Or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. The show starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are you ready? It's showtime.
All right, happy to have the next gentleman on Sports Card Nation, even though he's a Ravens fan. Well, I'll overlook that. But together we've proven that a Steelers fan and a Ravens fan can coexist and be friends. I don't want to make them wait too long. So welcome, Mr. Danny Black, to Sports Card Nation.
Well, thank you very much. And I will say the first time I met you, I realized I was wearing a Ravens shirt, and I almost went and changed before I said hello.
It's funny, Dan. You know, I've been a Steelers fan since I was a kid growing up in New York City. I took a lot of abuse from my friends there, but I'm one of those Steeler fans that, you know, I don't really, while I may not root for teams in our division, obviously, I don't make it too personal with fans of the other team. I've seen that done. I've attended enough NFL games. It's not my style, but we all can't be fans of one team. So I'm respectful as such, and we get along pretty good. So that's we're setting a good example there. But this is, you do live radio. You've rebirthed your podcast. We're going to talk about that, but and looking and knowing you a little bit, but looking at your bio, you've wore many hats, hobby hats, sports hats, you've got quite the bio. But I want to talk to you about you also did card business, kind of the same era I did in the 90s. Talk about that. How did you start in the hobby? And then the business, you got into the business side of that.
Well, I think that's the nicest way I've ever been called, old and unemployed, in one question. I think you and I are about the same age. I grew up in Baltimore. Just absolutely fell in love with sports. I was very, very lucky. I had a father who was a sports fan, and he was not necessarily a card or collectible guy, but he taught me the stuff. Listen, I was learning, Hannes Wagner's batting average, before I was out of first grade. So that type of influence. And basically, it was back in the local car shop days. I don't need to tell you, but I was on the other side of the counter as the kid coming in and buying every week. That was actually the deal for my allowance growing up, and start building the collection and working up. And then finally, my parents got annoyed with me bugging them, and they said, "You're off on your own." And very much like I heard you talking about. I got my tax ID number and started doing shows. I mean, it was a whole different world back then. You're doing a mall show. You're doing a VFW. There was a police hall, I think, back that I used to do. And, I loved it. And I've always worked in sports. I couldn't get away from it. And I tried to for a little while in my life. And basically, I am very passionate about the hobby. It's one of the reasons I think you and I get along. There can be a business side, but if you're not absolutely passionate about sports and about what you're doing in the hobby, what you're holding, what you're touching, what you're looking at, then this is the wrong business. And I think the people who have stayed in it, even through the ups and downs, and life throws you obstacles, but if you keep coming back, then that's the passion, and those are the people who I think make the hobby great. And I hope to contribute whatever little piece I can.
Yeah, well said. And you said something I think is very important. I kind of want to reiterate. Wow, I do shows now as a dealer, and I'm set up, and obviously you want to sell your wares when you do a show. I got started, like you said, as a young man at 7 years old, just collecting the cards as a young sports fan. So I got in it, kind of at the ground level, and like you, going to a card store. I was there literally almost every day. I'm sure you can relate to that. Finally, the owner of the card store is like, "John, you're here every day. I need help. You want to work?" And we work sort of a half cash, half merchandise kind of price to be there each day for a certain amount of hours. And it's funny, the money I would get paid, I would just buy more stuff anyway. So it was really full merchandise. And go ahead.
It sounds like he had a racket going on. He got you to do the work and then reinvest it right back in the store.
Yeah. He was Kathy Lee before Kathy Lee existed. And like you said, by doing that, I amassed quite a collection. My friends are like, "You should do shows." At that point, his name was Rudy. I was actually working the shows for Rudy, but again, a lot of my friends are like, "You should do your own shows." And so I got my tax number. I was 15 years old. What age were you when you mentioned your tax number? Well, how old were you, remember?
My parents made me get my driver's license, so I was 16 in about a week.
Okay, yeah. So just a year after me, and it's funny. I had my I didn't get, being from New York City. I knew how to drive, but I actually didn't officially get my license until I was 22. So I had my tax number at 15, my driver's license at 22. Figure that one out. But
how did you get the display cases? That was the whole thing for my parents. Was I had the glass display cases, and I had to have a car with the trunk big enough. That was the whole deal. They said they're not taking it in their car.
Yeah, no, my dad would help me. My dad my dad. I was going to say my grandfather was already gone by that time. I got started with cards with my grandfather as just a collector, but when I was doing like flea markets and shows, it was my dad. He'd help me set up, and then he'd leave and then come back at the end of the show. He'd walk around a little bit, maybe buy a couple things. He was into cards, not in the same way I was. Brooklyn Dodger guy. He'd probably buy a couple Brooklyn Dodgers and then head out of the show, and then just come back, around closing time, help me pack up, load the car, and home we went. So that's really how I did it. And the very first show, 15 years old, 1987. I made $1,500, which obviously, in 1987 was even more than we think it is today. And my dad was shocked, and I resided with my grandmother, and she's like, you can't walk around with that in your pocket like that. You got to put it in the bank, or you got, people know you have that. And so that's really how I got my first bank account started. It's an account I literally still have. I've changed banks, but it's an account I literally still have today. It's a separate card account. Like none of my, I'm married, so none of my wife, our joint account, none of my card stuff actually comes out of that. I don't buy anything from that. If I pay like my table fees, that comes out of the card account. I remember, Danny, when I was dating my wife, or when we were getting married, actually, we were engaged, and I told my wife about this business account, this card account, and I remember she asked me, like, what are the plans for that card account? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Nothing's going to change. I've had it since I was 15 years old. What are you talking about? And she goes, don't you, we're partners, or, partnership, we're getting married. I'm like, well, you're not a partner in my car. Like, we're partners in everything else. But the card stuff is like, I've been doing since I was 7, business wise, since I was 15. That's, unless you're going to learn what I do and like get in the pit and get your hands dirty. And, at first she was actually not, I will tell you this, I don't know. I think I told the story at least once on the show. She wasn't real happy about that. But the more I explained to her that the point of this account was so I don't have to touch our joint money, she understood it more. She didn't really get the gist of it. But when I explained to her that the point was that no money would come out of her joint account pertaining to cards. And it made more sense to her, and I kind of didn't have to sleep on the couch anymore. So, figuratively, but so yeah, we have similar stories. You reading your bio and stuff you mentioned. I don't know if it's okay to talk about. You mentioned a theft that kind of derailed you. Kind of what you can talk about. What happened there?
Sure, and I'm a complete open book about this. In fact, it changed my perspective on the hobby, and I think it was a big growing up moment. Unfortunately, I was coming back from a show, and so of course all the inventory's with me, and I'm in that car I was talking about with all the glass cases in the trunk, and I was like 15 minutes from home, and I was running out of gas. So I said, there was a gas station pull right off the highway. Back before credit cards, kids, and when you have to go up to the booth and ask them to put 20 on number 5. And so I stepped out of my car, went up to the booth, asked them to put 20 on number 5, turned around and watched some gentleman jump in my car and drive it away.
Oh, your whole car got stolen.
The entire car, the entire card collection, which the guy did not know was that it was even in there. I mean, he got lucky, which I think is unfair. I think he should have returned the cards. It was an Accord. He could have kept the Accord. The cards he should have returned. And, to make a long story palatable for a podcast, I will just say the insurance issues were not properly handled, and the value of the collection was never restored. So I went from essentially a fully stocked dealer to basically a personal collection in one stop for gas. So, I talk about insurance. I don't care who you use, people, but if you have a collection, make sure it's insured.
Yeah. Never caught apprehended the thief at all?
I feel like I'm going to give you ammo in the Pittsburgh-Baltimore conversation. So the guy who stole it from me had the keys because he stole it from me. When they found the car, the engine was stripped. That means the gentleman who stole it from me had it stolen from him before they found the car. So, they found it stripped, and the cards were long gone.
Man, that's tough. I've had a partner steal. Not as bad as that. I'm not going to compete with you on that level, but an 84 Fleer update set. Most people in the hobby, especially on the baseball side, are very familiar with that. Your Puckett, Gooden, Clemens. At the time, it's still a really nice set. At the time, obviously even nicer before the steroid and drug use kind of derailed some of those guys. Puckett came out of that still smelling good, but that set was a 4-figure set back in the day, which will tell you really how good it was. And I had a partner of mine take the key cards out of that, kind of close the set up, and I didn't notice until he was sort of not around anymore anyway, and figured out he had taken them. Obviously, that doesn't compare to having my whole inventory taken away. And so when that happened, Danny, that was kind of it for you for a little bit. For how long?
It was certainly a professional step back on the hobby side. It's funny you say that. Maybe I should be a lot less upset all these years of therapy, and I think I only lost Todd Van Poppel. It was one of those things where I just, you couldn't restock overnight. I wasn't going to be doing shows anytime soon. I had to cancel a couple commitments. And, I said, listen, I got into this because I loved it. And that was the thing. I always just loved the hobby. It wasn't the hobby's fault. And so I just really went into personal collecting for a little while. I decided I wanted to stay into sports. I ended up going into professional sports on the management business side. And went into a lot of PCs. I didn't know that they were called PCs back then. I just thought they were called collecting cards you like. And I did things like the Orioles moved here in 54. 54 happens to be a beautiful set. So I collected the 54 Oriole team set, PSA. It's one of those things where, when it was for me, the grade didn't matter, which was fantastic. It was freeing in a lot of ways. And this is, still early in the PSA years. But it gave me a whole different perspective because I started being a fan again, and I started, that childhood part of me came out. So I had a lot of years of working in sports, but collecting on a personal level, and that was a real refreshing change. I think it made me a lot better of a professional hobbyist now than I was.
Going to step aside for a real quick break, but we'll be right back with more with Danny.
The Sports Card Shop is your small-town local card shop with a global reach. Located in New Buffalo, Michigan, the shop is one of the most accessible in the Midwest. In addition to being an authorized Panini Direct dealer, the Sports Card Shop carries all major trading card brands, including Topps, Upper Deck, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and more. With all that new wax, 500,000 singles, and showcases full of graded cards, you're sure to find something great for your collection, whether you're just starting out or a seasoned collector. The Sports Card Shop is your one-stop shop. So call us, come see us, or visit us on the web and social media. Our phone number is 269-469-0140. Website is thesportscardshop@moco.com. The Sports Card Shop is part of the Moco Retail Group, connecting sports, the hobby, and people around the world.
We are back with Danny Black. Yeah, and you mentioned, working in the sports field itself for both the Orioles and Braves organizations. Talk about kind of what you did and getting to know or see some of those players up close. It's not all, roses and daisies and great things. Did that affect maybe even how you hobbied at all?
It was interesting. If you have experience, I think, at all with professional athletes, you learn a couple different things. The first part is they are normal people. They just happen to have an extraordinary skill, similar to a musician or anybody else, and it de-idolizes them a little bit. So that was the first thing. And the second thing is you started rooting for guys based on their personalities, not necessarily based on the back of the baseball card. So from that perspective, like I said, the personal collecting got a lot freer. And I think I now take into consideration probably some more human factors. If I'm looking at prospects or younger guys that I'm going to take a chance on, I probably consider their personality a little bit more than I would have in the past. But other than that, listen, I just freaking loved it. I got to work around these guys. With the Braves, I was lucky enough to play catch with Javi Lopez's glove on Turner Field. I mean, who gets to do that? I don't know if you remember Turner Field and opened the big Coke bottle out in left field.
Yeah.
That they used to try to hit the home runs. I ended up being the liaison between Coca-Cola and the Braves, so I was actually the man responsible for the Coke bottle that first year. I don't know what that job title was called. Cool. But that was my job. I had to keep everybody involved in the Coke bottle happy. So if Coca-Cola showed up, we had to make Coca-Cola happy. if my bosses at the Braves shut up, we had to make them happy. I ran the Coke bottle the first year, and I ended up moving back to Baltimore with the Orioles, and much more to my talents, I was lucky enough to work in the sports art gallery for the Orioles, which was I think today is still an underrated part of the hobby and collecting is fine sports art, and I got a lot of experience there, so I was just very blessed.
Yeah, we saw sports art, as you well know, kind of blow up the last few years. I've always said art, the cards themselves are little works of art, especially when you get it to the vintage side, where many of those years were, paintings or based on paintings. And, the cards themselves, the designs, are works of art in their own right. And so, and all that's important just even for, the historical point, to look back and wherever we are now, we have to attribute to the past, which is the bridge to where we are now, and to work in that area, especially being already have a passion for the hobby. I'm sure was a cool thing for you to get to do.
Yeah, and it was a weird time. It was kind of near when I was with the Braves, it was the opening of Turner Field, and then when I was with the Orioles, it was the end of Cal Ripken's career. And I grew up a big Cal Ripken fan, so it was kind of a little dichotomy there. The Braves were a consistent winner at that time, and you talked about the players not being very imposing. Saw Greg Maddux in the locker room one day, and it's amazing that he has a Cy Young Award, much less all of them. He was built like my librarian. It was unbelievable. But that's what it does. It humanizes these guys. I mean, listen, this was, I can tell you, Greg Maddux was clean, guys. I promise you. This was before the weight training. I mean, it was just a whole different feel in there. And, it did humanize a lot of them. And, it made me very lucky, I think, to do what I do. And I figured out I'm never going to hit a curveball. I played baseball when I was younger. And so it's where do we find, how do we find a way to do what we love? What does my other job need to be to pay the bills so I can do what I want? And that's what turned a corner so I could really, stick with it and find a way to stay involved in a way I loved.
I'm glad you mentioned Maddux. I mean, some of the stats, if you look up some of the funny, quirky stats, like, his numbers against some of the better hitters in the game, Tony Gwynn at the top of that list. And even a quote from Maddux, I'm probably not exactly, but he said, listen, I didn't have a lot of different pitches. I tell you what's coming. But my curveball was so good. Good luck hitting it, even when it's coming. And that's about as cocky as he got. And he's a guy just didn't walk a lot of people and just went after people and said, either I'm going to win or the batter's going to win. But I'm not putting in. No one's getting on base, free on a walk and that sort of thing. I pitched in high school, and I'm not comparing myself to Greg Maddux, but that was sort of my mentality. You're either going to get a hit off me or I was going to get you out, whether it be ball and play or strike you out. I didn't throw super hard. I had three pitches that repertoire that I used. And, I rarely walked anyone. I can't deny or confirm that someone would get hit by a pitch accidentally on purpose, but that was as close to a walk as I ever got. And I was good at painting corners. That's another Maddux trait. And but he would just, some of the stuff on him is just insane. If you didn't know it's true, you wouldn't believe it. And didn't blow anybody away, but would strike people out. And didn't have an arsenal of five pitches. It was kind of like Mariano Rivera, but the starting version of him. A lot of people may not realize Mariano actually started as a starter, and because he didn't have a lot of pitches, but threw hard, they moved him to the pen.
He set up John Wetland, people. Look that up one time. He set up John Wetland. The greatest reliever of all time was an eighth inning guy when he came up. I love that.
He was a terrible starter. He almost was out of baseball. Yep. I mean, I don't want to make this the Mariano Rivera show, but you can look it up. The Yankees they were deciding on what to do with him. and cutting him was a choice. They didn't obviously wind up doing that. He made a transition to a different role. Obviously, first a setup guy, and then when they moved on from Wetland, he assumed the closer role, and we know how that worked out. But I mean, he was very close. That's those are the great stories of a lot of sports. How close these legends were to actually never being legends potentially, and it's crazy. And you got to see that greatness in Maddox's case up close and personal. You mentioned Ripken. That's one of the great people, not just players, but people of baseball as well. And you can't put a price on that stuff. Very cool. You've been to two Super Bowls. You've experienced sports on a different level than most. I've attended a lot of sporting events myself. Nothing, not a famous game. I tell folks that probably the best game I saw was a spring training game. It was in Fort Lauderdale. It was 11. Ron Guidry, Louisiana Lightning, threw a 9-inning spring training no-hitter. Now we all know in spring training, pitchers throw a couple innings and the next guy comes in. Back then, he just
nine is all of spring training now.
Yeah, he didn't come out. I think they knew he had a no hit. I don't know what happened in the dugout. I don't know if they tried to take him out, and he said, "Listen, till I give up a hit here, I'm staying in this game." And it was versus the Pirates. I remember it was Yankees Pirates, Fort Lauderdale Stadium, and even at 11 years old, I knew I was a baseball kid, so I'm like, he's got a no hitter, and like he keeps coming out. And after the last out, I mean, it wasn't the reaction wasn't the same as like a regular season no hitter, but everyone came out and kind of shook his hand and kind of walked off with him. He kind of tipped his hat to the fans that were there, and it was kind of so I saw a no hitter that wasn't a no hitter. Didn't count. You won't find it in the record books, but that's about the biggest game. I'm sure I've went to bigger games, but I just remember a rare moment where a guy pitches a complete game in spring training only because he didn't allow any hits and they just kept him in there. And
I'm going to steal that story from you. I've never heard of a spring training no hitter. I'm going to tell everybody.
Yeah, I can. I don't know. I don't remember the date. Obviously, you can kind of narrow it down, but 1983. 1983 Yankees Pirates Fort Lauderdale Stadium, and I was 11. I vaguely remember like maybe in the 6th or 7th inning. I think maybe the Pirates were a little perturbed that that Guidry was still in there. I don't remember who. I thought I remember someone laying down a bunt. They got thrown out at first, but I think that was the Pirates' way of saying, "Hey, you're gonna keep this guy in here while we're gonna try to break this thing up cheaply with a bunt." It didn't work, and he got his no. It didn't count, but he got his spring training no. Just the same, kind of an odd baseball story. I remember the same year, not that day, getting to talk to Billy Crystal for 30 minutes at 11 years old, and I was down the first baseline before a game, and he came up to me, and I knew who he was. I'm a New York City kid too, as well. So he's from New York, and he just talked to me and was very cordial, kind of a cool moment. There was really no one else around us. It was weird. It was so before the game that the crowd, there wasn't a lot of crowd there yet, and asked me what position, did I play Little League, what how I was doing, what position I played. We talked about the Yankees at the time and what I thought, and it was just a fun 30-minute talk with a celebrity who, other than me knowing he was a celebrity, he was just talking to me like any person would, and it was a cool moment. So, but don't the stories like that, Danny? From being you can't put a price on that stuff. and it's fun. Step aside to hear from one of our great sponsors, but we'll be right back after that. Greg Morris Cards wants to buy your cards. A long-trusted name in the sports card business, Greg has been buying sports card collections for over a decade now. Any sport, baseball, basketball, football, or hockey, in any era, vintage or modern, will do. Just no junk wax error sets, please. To learn more and to sell Greg Morris your cards, go to www.gregmorriscards.com. Fill out the consignment sale request form and someone will get back to you on how to get cash for your cards. Also, if you're a dealer looking to sell your collection, Greg Morris wants to talk. Plenty of dealers use Greg Morris' massive eBay platform as a way to consign their cards. Take advantage of Greg's experience in the hobby to get more bang for your buck. Sports Card Nation has returned with more with Danny. Working for the Braves, did you still retain your Orioles fandom?
It was funny. I was so known as an Orioles fan that one of the executives came up to me right before, about an hour before first pitch on opening day, and said the team rules specifically were I was not allowed to cheer for a visiting team, and this was at the beginning of interleague play, so the Orioles would be visiting the Braves that year. And they warned me 1 hour before the first pitch on opening day to remember who I rooted for. And when the Orioles were in town, if anything good would happen, I turned around and put my back to the field, so I would not be seen cheering by anybody. And I fell in love with the Braves. I fell in love with Atlanta. The Braves are certainly my National League team, but I don't think you can grow up anywhere and really change your allegiance. Which leads me, and I know you're supposed to be asking the questions, but I need you to confirm or deny a rumor. Are you a Yankees or Mets fan?
All right, so this is a good question. I've talked about this. I know at least once. I'm a Mets fan today, but I was growing up. I was a Yankee fan. Thurman Munson was my guy. Craig Nettles, Willie Randolph, and the guy that I didn't like was the owner, was Steinbrenner. And so I grew up a Yankees fan. I had all the autographs of those guys at the time. I went to games with my grandfather. And then Steinbrenner, was hard. He just, you know how he was. He would just trade guys, sign guys. It got very hard to like the team because the minute you liked the guy, he was shipping them out of town. The whole Billy Martin fired 5 times, hired 6 or whatever it was, 4. And it just became a circus. And to a young kid, just when you kind of got to like somebody, they go off to another team. Steinbrenner always with a microphone talking more than the players. It sort of rubbed even a young version of me the wrong way. And I became a Mets fan. I became a Mets fan around 83, 84, kind of when I was going to Florida, and yeah. So, because I remember even in that conversation,
Any coincidences?
And well, they really they weren't good yet. And so, I always tell people when I kind of like the Mets, I really started following them more 81, 82, and they were losing 100, 110 games a year at that point. So no one could say, well, you jumped on them in 86 when they won the World Series. It was a few years before that. I remember even, going back to that Billy Crystal conversation, he asked me, are you a Yankee fan? And it's funny how your memory gets refreshed. I remember answering him like, kind of, and I said, I sort of fallen out of love with him and kind of following the Mets too, because of how Steinbrenner is. I said it like 11-year-old would say it, probably clumsy and awkwardly, but I got the point across. And I remember he didn't really, I don't know if he thought I was wearing a wire or something, but he's a huge Yankee fan. I think he said something to the extent like, yeah, I understand, or I get it. He didn't really add to it at all. And so that was about around that time was when I was really kind of getting off one train and hitching my wagon to the other. And once I did that, I don't hate the Yankees even to this day. I don't like them. I don't follow them. I'm a Mets guy, 100%. But the whole Steinbrenner thing kind of ruined the experience for me. Only speaking for myself, and
I had to have clarification. We already have enough with the Steelers. I had to figure it out.
Yeah, Steelers were the whole way through, and again, I took a lot of abuse from my New York City friends at the time, and like, hey, how do you like the Steelers? We're in New York. I said, well, I definitely don't like the Giants or Jets, and the Mean Joe Green Coke commercial was really what sent me over the top. I was already going that way, and that's the rest is history there. But started out as a Yankee fan, full disclosure, and then converted, almost like we're talking about religion, converted to Methodiism, and been that way. It's hard to pinpoint. I kind of explained to you. I'd say 81, 82, I really started looking at sort of getting off the Yankees bus, and knew I would probably, I wasn't going to go too extreme. I was going to stay in New York, and it was either going to be the Yankees or Mets. And I started, I think I applied for citizenship with the Mets fans. I think I fully kind of came aboard 83, 84, and the rest is history. I was a big John Franco guy because John Franco was from Brooklyn. I'm not going to tell the story. I'll tell you maybe off the. I actually got the bat against John Franco in Brooklyn. It was a pretty cool moment. Me and some friends, we were playing. I'll give you the cliff notes. We were playing some pickup baseball. A car pulls up. John Franco gets out. There's about 7 of us, me and 6 of my friends. About 5 of us, including myself, recognized who he was. He watched at first, and he said, "Hey, fellas," he had a gentleman with him who we did not know. And hey, you mind? Can I? Yeah. He said, "Can you guys? I'll throw you some batting practice." And our first thing is we're young, so we're like, "Who's going to catch you?" And he goes, "Oh, this is whoever." I don't remember his name. Have to forgive me. It was his catcher at St. John's, who he was still friends with, who he was with. He goes, "This is my catcher from my college days. He has no problem catching." He threw on some quick gear, and at first he was just kind of lobbing them in so we could hit them. And I remember, saying, "Mr. Franco, listen, if I'm going to hit off you, I'm 13 at the time, 14. I'm like, I want you to really throw. Like, I don't, if I can go home tonight and say I got a hit off John Franco, I don't want it to be because you were taking 30 miles off of it." He goes, "All right." And, I swung and missed at some, but I put some in play too. And a great guy, probably played, through for 30, 40 minutes. We all got like 10, 15 cuts and switched. And it was a cool moment. He goes, "Hey, thanks, guys, for letting me play. Good luck, on your seasons, and I'll see you later." And I don't even think at that time he wasn't with the Mets at that point. He was actually with the Reds, and he later became a Met. But we all, New York City folks sort of know how the locals are doing, and he was from Brooklyn, and wound up. It was nice. He became a Met, and I at least got the bat off him a little bit, and that was a lot of fun. And really down to earth guy, and to think about a major league pitcher, right? Like seeing some kids playing, he's with his college catcher, their buddies, and to stop and say, "Hey, let's have a little fun and play with these guys." And I remember my one buddy Joseph's like, "Hey, I'm not good at hitting the curveball. Can you throw me a bunch of those?" And that's what you want. That's what you get. He didn't. I will say this: after John Franco left, he still wasn't good at hitting the curveball. So he just got to see major league ones.
Could bring it, yeah.
He got to see major league. He couldn't hit little league curveballs. He wasn't going to hit major league.
I love that. I love that. That's like the old New York City stickball stories. I mean, that's the story in one version of another for 100 years. That's why I love baseball. I don't care what everybody else says. I will take the pledge. Best sport in the world.
Yeah, and it was just crazy. Yeah, it was just a crazy moment. I mean, we were talking about that for the next 3-4 weeks. I remember going back to school and no, you didn't. People thought you were lying and stuff. Probably said he was. I'm like, I know who John Franco was. It was John Franco. So but yeah, fun moment. Let's get back to the card. So when did you still collected now? Do you do shows now, Danny? Do you set up at the shows now?
Typically now, if I'm at a show, I'm usually representing my clients buying or selling. Uh,
Yeah.
Last year at the National, I had a client with a bunch of tobacco cards. Chantilly or Phil, it was the Philly show. A big lot of unopened wax. So it's whatever the client's needs are, and sometimes those are best met at the shows. I have started bringing my family with me because I think it's important to get my kids into it. So my profit margin's decreasing when I go to the shows because they're starting to spend, but they're getting into it. I still have a blast. So what I usually do is leave, whatever I need for business and then add a day on for myself.
Yep.
And I do try to walk around when I don't have to worry about, doing any business. Or if I'm on a press pass, sometimes I'll just turn it around and just get to look at the cases. And I enjoyed the conversation. I'm guilty of the guy that stops at the booth and we'll talk about Alkaline for an hour. I love that.
Yeah, I as someone who does shows, as someone who attends shows, LCSs, that I think they're important. Sure, you can buy almost anything on eBay and other auction sites, but there's something about that in-person camaraderie, those conversations, having a potential card that you're going to acquire in hand, see it up close. That's the card you're getting, not a scan on a computer screen or your phone screen. Nothing wrong with that. I do it. I'm not a hypocrite. But if you're giving me the choice between buying the same card in person or buying it online, I'd even pay a few bucks more for the in-person deal. It's just that's how it. I grew up. There was no eBay. I'm old, and so eBay was a new phenomenon. Not anymore, but when it first came out, there's something about that you can't replace in a digital world. It makes the world a smaller place. I give you that, but to have those conversations with people that share that same passion, like you said, whether it's talking about Al Kaline for an hour or Wander Franco for 30 minutes, whatever the case may be, you can't put a price on those sort of interactions. Again, when you're purchasing the card, whether it's a $10 card or a $10,000 card or whatever the price is, to have it in your hand, to look at it firsthand, you can't replicate that anywhere else than in person. I love that. I love that. That's why I still do shows. I sell a lot online. I don't need to do shows. Quite truth be told, I do well most of the time. Sometimes there's a clunker, truth be told too. But some of my best shows are not just what I made at the end of the day, but the people I've met, the conversations I've had, handing stuff out to young kids who are just starting or may not even be in the hobby officially yet. And I give them a free packs. And, I don't know if that gets them to be in the hobby or not, but it doesn't hurt me. The smile across their face, a mom or dad that says you're giving that to them for free. Like, yeah, no questions asked, and it just, I believe in that stuff. It goes a long way. Kids in the Hobby is a big platform of mine, but in-person hobby is another platform of mine. You never talk me out of that one.
Well, you saw me clapping. I could not agree. Those are literally the words I live by. And I'm going to encourage a lot of people to do this. I just donated 10,000 cards to a local card shop here. And
Yep.
There was two conditions. One, it only goes to children, and I don't want to see it, in the quarter bin or anything like that. And two, encourage the children to ask questions. It's amazing how far that store actually has said how far that's gone to get kids involved. Again, a lot of kids, that would be in there with dad, and didn't want to drop $45 on, the new release, a pack. We're able to get some cards and talk to Dad about the players Dad saw growing up, and they're all junk wax singles. But you have to get the kids involved, and they have to touch and feel the cards and smell the cards, and not worry about the grade or the price, and connect with the players, and that's the foundation, because that's how we all started. And you're going to lose that if your whole life is on the computer. I could not agree with you more.
Quick break, but we'll be right back after that.
Hey everybody, have you heard about Collectible? It's the one-stop shop where any collector can buy and trade affordable shares in some of the most rare and valuable sports cards and memorabilia in the world, starting from just $5. From 1952 Mickey Mantle PSA 10s in Wilt Chamberlain's iconic rookie uniform to one-of-one Patrick Mahomes RPAs, rare LeBron James logo mans, and everything in between, Collectible is creating never-before-seen access and opportunities for all. Let's grow the hobby we love together. Please note this is not a recommendation or solicitation to buy any security. All investment decisions should be undertaken after doing your own research.
Back to the show and more with Danny Black. I started as a 7 years old, Danny, 1979. There was no computers and internet, and all that stuff. I traded with my friends, got the packs at the corner store, and while I like I'm a gadget guy and I love technology. I'm also glad I grew up without it, and I appreciate not having it, and I appreciate having it as well. It's kind of seeing both worlds. I'm appreciative of both. But, I'm glad we're they're the next generation. We're not. I hate to be morbid, but that's life. We're not going to be here forever. I've said this many times. People probably listen right now saying, "John, we've heard this shtick before," but it's true. We got to have that next group behind us take the baton and keep the race going forward. Otherwise, the race is going to end. And listen, the hobby's never going to end. I'm not saying that, but to be thriving and good, we need young people to get active in the hobby and again keep it going. So let's get back to you. You had the podcast. You kind of took a hiatus, and then you brought it back. You also do a radio show on 105.7 The Fan in Baltimore. So this is old hat to you. Kind of talk about maybe more on the podcast side, Danny. What made you? I know I talked to you kind of before you relaunched, and you asked for a little bit of help, and I gave you the best I could. But what was it that lit that fire again and said, "Hey, I'm gonna get back on this horse and ride again"?
Well, first of all, you are very much underplaying the help you gave me, and I'm going to come back to that. I had been doing the radio show for a little while, and quite frankly, it was popular, and you're only limited to so many minutes on FM radio. The podcast gave me a chance to get more minutes and do more things that I wanted. When I launched my original podcast, I had the first couple episodes, and it wasn't a matter of just not being good. It just wasn't what I wanted to be and who I wanted to be. You were an incredible mentor to me, talking about your podcast, and you gave me some great advice, and I'll keep most of that between us. But the one thing that really resonated that I've shared with other people since then is find out what's important to you and just do it. And everybody else will either come along or they're not meant to be your listener anyway. And it's made me a lot more comfortable. I prefer to always have a conversation with somebody, but sometimes, on a podcast, you are by yourself, and you need to decide what your voice is. You need to decide what kind of guest you want and what you want from them, and how do you want them to represent you. And so thank you for your advice. I'm thrilled with the relaunch. Now I can say it's only bad, but it's not that it's not that it's unauthentic. Now it's authentically poor. So I am working to get that better, but I am really, really excited about the product I'm putting out, and I want to thank you publicly.
Wow. I appreciate that, Danny. Even meeting you at the National, I told you my door's always open. People, I'm just paying it forward. When I started, whatever it was, 3 years ago now, over 3 years ago, I had people that were already doing it, helping me out. I think it's just, I think we should be like that. Well, I appreciate you saying thank you. I think better to be like that than not, right? Or say, hey, find out for yourself, or no one helped me, I'm not going to help you. I wouldn't do that anyway, but I'm just saying, no one did that really to me. Who would I be to turn around and be that way? And there's 1,000 podcasts. When we get into the YouTube side, you can add that number exponentially goes up. I might have mentioned this to you in those conversations. I know someone asked me. I do a kind of a Q&A where I take a question. Sometimes someone asks me, John, do you feel like you're competing against these other sports card podcasts? I don't. I'm competing against myself to try to be better than I was last week. Sometimes I might get that done. Sometimes I might fall short. I don't listen. With all due respect, I don't listen to all those podcasts. I listen to some of them, maybe. So it's not fair to say, well, I'm better than this. I've never even heard that show. So I don't look at it as competing. I look at it as Danny is more of like a fraternity. We're all kind of have a passion, or at least I hope so. I mean, if you're going to do a pod, I don't want to speak for everybody. I'm sure there's some that don't. They're just kind of doing it for maybe different reasons. But I do the podcast because I love cards. I love talking about them. I love helping people when I can. And when that's gone, I'll turn the mic off. I don't ever see it happening, but if hypothetically, if it did, then it's time to be done. So, to answer that question, I get asked a lot. Are you competing with these other podcasts? No, I don't know what their numbers are, and that's their business. I would never even ask them. I'm in the same fraternity. I've had many of those on this show. I've been on their show. Right here, we're doing the same thing. So I don't look at it like that. And so if I'm not competing with somebody, then why wouldn't I help them out? Even if I was, I'd probably still help them out. And so that's how I look at it. Just do the best you can do. And as long as you be yourself, like I told you, and not everyone's going to like what you say. I learned that from my coaching experience. From coaching youth sports and then eventually high school sports. You can't win the whole room. Even in the years where I won a championship and we didn't lose a game, there was 3 parents that didn't like me, frankly, because Jimmy didn't play enough. Even though he got a big trophy, Coach Newman didn't play Jimmy enough, or he was better than the kid that started in front. So you can't win the whole room no matter what. When I first started coaching, I was naive, thinking I could, and then I figured it out. That's not how that works. And I think sort of doing content creation, sort of the same thing. Not everyone's going to like you. Some people may just look at you and before you even speak, if they see what you look like, they're just going to already cast judgment, regardless of what you say or don't say. And so it's not I'm going to lose sleep over. It's what I kind of told you, and I'll say it out loud. I've said it out loud before, is, be yourself, be honest, give your opinion, whether, everyone agrees with it, which won't happen. Or but no one can say, well, John or Danny didn't speak their mind, or I didn't have to guess what they thought. I know where they stand, and for those that agree with us, that's great. And I don't want everyone. That's no fun either. I don't want everyone agreeing across the board. We're not cookie cutter cookies, and I'm not right all the time. So I want someone to say, hey, you were wrong there. A lot of times you'll hear me say, hey, remember a couple months ago when I said this? I was wrong, swing and a miss. And I think that's what makes us human, to admit, hey, I've done this a long time. You've done this a long time. Some of the stuff that's happened recently, we would have never predicted that. And anyone that tells you that is lying, and I don't do that. So you be yourself, and that's the best you can be. Like and I get that a little bit from my grandfather. It's a piece of advice he gave me when I was younger and he was around. I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather said to me, if you're yourself, Johnny, you don't have to worry about being anyone else. And then kind of piggyback, I remember he also said, if you don't lie, you don't have to remember your truth. And I thought that, it's funny when you're a kid, you just think it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo and you just nod, okay, grandpa, yeah, you're right. And it's when you get older and you're like, that's what he meant, and he was dead on. Like, and so
I couldn't remember what I had for breakfast. I don't have time to lie to people.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If I just say how I feel, I won't have. Sometimes you hear. I had a friend that worked at ESPN and radio in Orlando, and they would tell him his opinions, and that's why he doesn't work there. And he came back to Syracuse, and he started his own broadcast company, which is I'm not going to get into, but it's sort of how Sports Card Nation came to be as a direct result of that. And he used to love his job, and then he said, "Hey, I don't enjoy going to work no more because they're going to tell me my opinions, and then I have to remember them because they're not really mine. I have to remember. That's almost like I'm playing a character. I'm playing a role." And really stressed him out, and said, that's not true to myself. I can't do this no more. As cool as it is to work for that company, I can't sell out on that level, and came back here and did his own thing and doing all right. So, I already knew that sort of, just from how I was raised, like to, just be honest and give your opinion. And if someone agrees with it, awesome. If they don't, and you debate it, be respectful, use tact. And at the end of the day, if you're still not on the same page, just agree to disagree. Don't make it personal. That's the other thing, we see in the hobby is people can't have even discussions, and then it just turns into name calling and you're stupid or worse than that even. And I don't entertain that anymore.
Talking about Bengals, right?
You could be. I'm sure there's some of those in there. I'm not going to deny it, but I just don't get into like long drawn out debate, especially on opinion stuff. Because really, on opinion stuff, this. There's really no wrong answer. You just feel this way, and I just feel this way. Neither one of us are wrong. It's not a history book thing like this happened exactly like this, and it's not the Earth is round or the Earth is flat debate. For example, like grading. I love grading. I hate grading. Right? Well, neither one of us are wrong. That's just our personal taste. And so to get into a debate over grading, I'm just not going to go down that road. Same thing, another hot button topic, to investment, hobby. And it can be an investment. You may not do it for that reason. I don't do it necessarily for that reason, but cards can't sell for millions of dollars. And us not say that there's an investment asset to that. $1 million is investment class cash. And so you may not do it for that. I don't do it for that. I mean, I like when my cards sell for, a good chunk of change or go up in value, but I'm not in it for that, where if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't do it anymore. But to say they're not, I think is sort of denying sort of the truth. You can say they are, but that's sure as heck not why I'm in the hobby. And I agree with you because I think that's more of an accurate statement. So it's those kind of some of those hot button stuff where there's no real wrong answer. I'm just not going to get in there and try to change it. You're never going to change someone's mind, most likely. And it's
also a good business lesson. I mean, you've been in business a long time. You don't burn bridges, you don't pick fights, and you always treat people with respect. If you can't follow those rules, then that's why Twitter invented a mute button.
Yeah, and it never ends well. And I wasn't always like that. I went down some of those rabbit holes, and you learn by trial and error. And you just say, I lost 3 hours. I'm never getting back. The DeLorean's not real. I can't find Dr. Emmett Brown and get the 3 hours back. I'm just not going to do that again. Like if someone asks me, my door is always open. If someone wants to ask me a question or get an opinion, and again, if it's When I was a little bit younger, I could actually do a little bit of a Christopher Lloyd impression. I'm not gonna do it. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. I'll be helpful if someone asks me my opinion. If I'm doing obviously the show, I'm not going to, get into name calling. I'm not going to go to that level. And if it starts to go to that level, I'm going to exit stage left. Not because I'm not scared to debate someone or I'm fearful of any of that. I just don't want to invest the time. Talking about investment, I don't want to invest the time in that conversation. That's not going to end well. I'm not going to change their mind. They're most likely not going to change my mind. Maybe they resort to name calling, and I'm not gonna even go down that road. And so I've learned over the years to know when to sort of kind of drive around that pothole rather than boom, go in it and rattle the whole cage. I think I'm better off, at the end of the day, for it. It's, it is. Some people like that stuff. Some people thrive on it. Some people have combative personalities. Maybe when I was younger, but that's why I played sports. That's what I was doing on the baseball and football field. That was my combative personality. Whether it was me tackling someone or, whether I was pitching or batting, that was my competitive moment. I'm not, those days, maybe when I'm coaching, I still have those juices flowing, but when it comes to card stuff, it's not worth the aggravation that might cause. I'm trying to enjoy this stuff, not be put off by it. So that's the best advice I can give too. Is it's all right to have discussion. I'm not telling you not to do it at all. That's what podcasts sort of are, especially when you have guests on. But just don't when it gets to that level, you gotta that's it, So
I think we're both too old for drama is really what we're saying.
Time to hear from one of our great sponsors, but we'll be right back with more with Mr. Black. Welcome back. More with Danny Black. You never know. That's the other thing with which doing shows and podcasting, whether it's radio or podcast, you never know who's dialed in and listening, and you gotta, remain as professional as you can. I mean, I have fun. I'll use sound bites and sticky stuff, but at the end of the day, you want to set a good example too. And
I'm going to give you another compliment because I drive to work, and my daughter has requested that I put on your podcast before. And that is about as high of a compliment when a 14-year-old girl as to put on the Sports Card Nation podcast, or the one she calls it, the one with the nice guy. So, amen to you. You are correct. You never know who's listening, and I could not agree more.
Yep. No, and I appreciate that. And please tell your daughter thank you. That means a lot. Any feedback I get, and I'm blessed to get a decent amount. And no matter how much I get, Danny, and where it comes from, it always hits me in the feels, as the kids say, and it means a lot to me. And even from coaching, right, to have a kid come up to you and say, "Hey, coach, you spend more time with me than my own dad does." I wish that wasn't the case, and that situation was better. But if you have that sort of impact on someone, now even teaching and getting to know the students that I get to teach and work with every day, I don't take that stuff lightly. I never will. And hearing your daughter say that means tremendous. That could be could be the opposite of that. Like, that guy stinks, and turn him off. And I've gotten a couple of those, but I've gotten way more of those. And it's I don't want to say it's why we do it, but it really does put fuel in that tank to keep us knowing that someone out there, really enjoys what you're doing enough to take time out of their day and tell you that is what, you can't put a price on stuff like that. It means, I've had people send me letters or send me gifts. Danny, every letter I've gotten like that, I wish I would have brought it over here, but I have a folder over there. I keep every one of them. There's stuff in there from 2-3 years ago, and maybe if I'm even having like a bad day, I'll pull that thing out and read through some of that, and it I tell you what, that'll perk you up and put things in perspective pretty quick. And and I always say, even if you impact one person in a positive manner, you're doing a good job. Whatever your profession is, teacher, doctor, lawyer, podcaster, sports host, whatever, coach, whatever hat you wear, if you're making a positive impact on even just one person, and most of the time it's going to be more than that. If it's one, there's going to usually be more. It's worth it, because you never know what kind. And I can share, but I've had kids that I've coached tell me, I was thinking about doing this, and you kind of made me see that's not the way to go. And I don't want to get too emotional, but it's those conversations that just you'll never forget, and makes you feel like, hey, I'm making a difference. And that's the biggest compliment you can be paid, is like, hey, you've impacted my life in some form or fashion. Even in a podcast form, Danny, where someone says, hey, for that hour, I really enjoyed the show. Even on that level, for me, with this, especially now, I'm not in the coaching realm right now. So this sort of replaced that for me. It's important.
Yeah, I mean, I've loved your message since I got back into the hobby. I was a little hesitant to start listening to these podcast things, but your voice and what it represents for the hobby is really the message that I've tried to get across. And some of it's just humanity. The hobby represents a lot of what humanity is, and situations reveal a lot about people's character. And if you're lucky enough to have gone through some situations and build from that character, pay it forward, like you said. Let the garbage fall by the wayside. Life's too short, people. Every moment, and we're talking about sports cards. I mean, how blessed are we? How lucky? I mean, Top Series 1 comes out, and this is the biggest thing on my calendar is Top Series 1. What kind of life is that? How awesome is that? I'm not going to lie. I'll apologize. I'll tell everybody how the sausage is made. I ran late on John tonight. Okay, you know why I ran late? I'm working on a deal for an item that I hope will be at an auction at the National. We do what we love. Yeah. We are blessed and blessed and blessed. And if you can't treat people with respect and have fun, go do something else.
Yeah, that's the thing. When I see some, and we're going to come down the stretch here, and I want you to give out where people can catch you on the radio and your podcast. But just kind of closing too, I always said this, Danny, if you're not having fun, the hobby's supposed to be a release, an outlet, a hobby, that you can relax, have a little fun. I don't even mind a little debate. That can be fun in debate. But if it's a point of angst, or it's getting you mad or upset, or you're just constantly complaining about it, listen. And I might complain every once in a while, but there's some folks it just seems they really thrive in that. If you're if you're complaining a lot about it or not having fun, then take a break, whether that's a week, a month, a year, take a different angle, maybe a different way to hobby. You can always pivot, into different things, whether it be collecting a team, collecting a player, whatever. You're the boss of your own hobby. Sometimes you can change up what you're doing, might make all the difference. But if you're at a point where even doing that or whatever, you're unhappy, that sort of defeats the purpose of why we're in it. And I would never tell someone to leave the hobby. I'm the last guy to do that. But if you're unhappy and it's giving you angina, then maybe you have to. I'm not saying you want to, or I want to tell you that, but maybe you need to, and maybe leaving. Sometimes absence makes the heart grow fonder, and you'll miss it. You'll come back and sort of with a different perspective, a different attitude. It might be a different hobby for for you. But, I don't want anyone to leave, but at the same time, I don't want a bunch of grumpy people all the time either. So I would never ask someone to stay in the hobby and be unhappy. That would be a selfish way of looking at it. But give everybody, first off, Danny, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate, you giving me sort of props, but we're all in the same fraternity. There's no, as I always say, there's no pension plan for podcasting. And my door is always open, not just really to anybody, but even that I don't have to tell you that at this point. But give out where websites, where people can find what you're doing. You do a great job as well. Give out all that stuff so people can find you as well.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you again for having me. I forgot we were even recording. Yeah, I think you and I could do 6 hours.
Yeah.
It's Danny Black. I'm from Baltimore, so it's sportsbalt.com, and my social media handle for everything is same thing, @sportsbalt. Same thing for the podcast. I'm not quite as good looking as John, but I hope you'll subscribe and listen anyway.
Well, if you say that, we're both in trouble. That's truth be told. So. Awesome stuff, man, and keep going. And we're all trying to do good stuff, and I know you're doing that, and keep it up. Like I said, it's fun. If you're having fun with it, that's what it's all about, and I think we both are. So let's keep doing it.
Well, next time I promise we'll get to cards, but thank you, and I mean that sincerely. Guys, when John says it, he means it. He's the same person off air as he is on. So thank you again for having me.
Anytime. We'll have to do, like you said, we probably could have did 6 hours. I don't know if everyone else would have enjoyed it the same way we would have, but we could have did it. All right, take care. Be well. Continued success.
All right, appreciate it, John. Thank you.
Pastime Marketplace has a line of graded card cases that are waterproof, airtight, dust-tight, and hardened to protect and organize your valuable collection. Each of our cases come with pre-cut and pre-formed foam, so you don't have to cut and tear the foam when you get your case. The pre-cut foam inserts are sized to hold PSA, Beckett, SGC, and CGS slabs. Store it all safely and securely with a case from Pastime Marketplace. Check them out at www.pastimemarketplace.com.
All right, want to thank you out there for listening and downloading the show. As always, without you, there's no us. Want to thank my friend and guest, Danny Black, for coming on. It was fun cutting it up with him. And check out what he's doing on Baltimore Sports Radio and his podcast, as he gave out all that information. Check him out. He's a fun guy, passionate, and loves what he does, and that's half the battle right there. And we're gonna have to put like a bet on the line between our Steelers and Ravens, something to the effect of, maybe the loser has to wear the opposing team's jersey and take a photo or something like that. We'll figure something out, make a fun little bet out of it if we can. Hey, just a reminder, you heard Zach Byrne do the Hobbies the People soundbite at the front end of the show. Did a great job. Thank you, Zach. But if you would like to do that, anyone out there listening, introduce yourself, even if you want to give something you do, a plug, a website, or a show that you do, or whatever, a free plug, do a soundbite, Hobbies the People soundbite, and send it to Sports Card Nation, all one word. Also add PC at the end of that, Sports Card Nation PC at gmail.com. Send us that sound clip, WAV file, and we'll put it into the rotation, and you can be part of the show. So basically, you say who you are, plug something if you like, not too long, and then, incorporate the tagline of the show, the Hobbies of the People. All right, with that being said, we're going to call it an episode, and we'll see you in a week.